If you like insects and you want to attract insects into your garden, this may well be the video for you to watch. One of the things that I'm regularly asked about is how I have such a good list of moths for the garden. You're looking at one of the reasons that there's such a good list. In fact, the current moth list for this garden, this small terrace garden in the middle of a Nottinghamshire mining town, is 525, and that's not with trapping or running a trap all night, every night. I'll only usually trap in the garden for anything from an hour to 3 or 4 hours. Longer trapping sessions are rare events here, and only when warranted. But one of the reasons that I do get so many invertebrates in this garden is right before your very eyes, and it's the abundance of nectar sources here. And a big part of the nectar source is the pink of Valerian. If you want to attract moths into your garden, Valerian is your #1 plant. Certainly it's the one that I would recommend. Bumblebees also like Valerian, but also for bumblebees is the large, what I call the bee tree, which is a ceanothus, which is about 15 years old now, and it's grown enormous, and it's just a complete mass of blue flowers, and the bumblebees just love it. Ceanothus is a great plant for bees. There's also some lavender down towards the bottom of the garden as well, which creates a nice nectar source used by a variety of invertebrates. The orange flowers are Californian poppies, which are also loved by insects, and every year gets full of silver wire moth caterpillars. Just on the very bottom corner, left hand corner of the screen, there's some marjoram, which provides a nectar source for many insects, but the whole garden is geared to attracting insects in, and that's what it does in abundance. Every amount of space is utilised to provide sources of nectar. There's these petunias and sapphinias on the left, and a variety of other plants on the right hand side, including horseshoe vetch, but a lot of plants that are useful for moths, butterflies, bees and other insects. That's one of the key things. Make the most of your space that you've got. Even if you've got just a window box, use that. You can plant that with a variety of nectar-bearing plants that will attract insects all year round. There's so much choice now, and it pays to do your homework when looking for sources of nectar. So if your space is limited, and this, bear in mind, is just a small, simple terraced garden. It's little more than, 30 feet maximum in length, and about 15-16 feet wide, but it's crammed full of plants and flowers that are good for invertebrates. There's also a couple of evergreen shrubs there that are good for overwintering invertebrates as well. If you think about your planting, you can have an invertebrate and insect rich garden no matter where you live and no matter how much garden you have. I'm a huge fan of Valerian. Some people don't like it, and it's one of these things because it's so common and grows everywhere. It's like a weed. Well, yes it is, but it's a beautiful weed if you call it a weed. I call it an attractant, and the reason I have so much of it is for one particular migrant moth. That migrant moth has yet to grace this garden with its presence this year, but since the year 2000 I've had well over 100 hummingbird hawk-moths grace this garden, all attracted by Valerian. Occasionally they'll come in later in the year to the remaining flowers of Buddleia bodneriensis, which is also a good nectar source. But Valerian is better. It seems to provide more nectar, and it holds hummingbird hawk-moths in place more than verbena does. And of course Buddleia is a particular favourite. Buddleia takes up a lot of room though, so you need a decent sized garden for Buddleia, and you only get a flowering period of a short period of time. The one advantage of Valerian is that you've got flowers from May until the very first frosts. If you keep deadheading the flowers, and the one on the left of the screen now is getting close to needing some maintenance, then it just keeps shooting and producing new flowers, and you get a succession of flowers throughout the course of the summer and autumn. And it's autumn that I really look for hummingbird hawk-moths. The first ones could be any time, usually the first week or fortnight of June. You get the first arrivals here in Nottinghamshire, but then it's usually August and September, and sometimes odd individuals into October that I get here. Hummingbird hawk-moths are brilliant. They're day flying, so it's a species that you can sit in the garden with a pint, as I frequently do, and just sit and wait and hope that for 5 minutes or 10 minutes a migrant species from France or Spain plonks itself in your garden and feeds up. And quite often it will come back. Hummingbird hawk-moths tend to feed every 2 hours. That's something that Dillis and I noticed over a number of years with the same individuals returning to the garden, and quite often they'll roost openly on the house wall. We've had several that have roosted overnight here. Sight of a hummingbird hawk-moth is the key event usually in this garden, and it's just reward such a fantastic day flying moth. It's just reward for the hours sitting here drinking pints of ale. It's a hard life, I suppose, but in the interests of science and data production, it has to be done. Which reminds me, my can opener's gone cold.